Hello, and thanks for joining me. Today I have some simple and unique botanical designs to share with you. I'm working in my small and medium sketchbook, and I'll link all these materials down below in the description. You don't need to use what I'm using, use what you have, but feel free to pick some of these things up if they seem helpful to you. I always have scratch paper and paper towels around, and I'll be using lots of different color materials, washi tape, and some bulldog clips to hold my pages down. So grab your things and let's get started. I'm calling this first exercise Winding Vines, and I think it is the quickest and easiest of the bunch, and it also makes for a great warm-up. I'm starting by painting the page I'll be working on because I want a bold and crazy color in the background, and also I'm using acrylic paint markers that tend to tear up the page when you use them unless you have paint down first. This is only a 3-color design, including the background color, and we're starting by just drawing some winding lines down the page, organically shaped, not too straight, something you would find in nature. I've chosen 2 colors that are sort of close in value, so there's not too much contrast, because I want the 3rd color to really pop off the page. You'll see that soon. We're just making simple leaf shapes off of these vines. You can use any leaf shape you like. I wanted my leaves to be very simple, pointed ovals. I'm staggering my leaves down the vine, but where you place yours is up to you. You can be as unique or as close to real life as you'd like. Your job here is to fill your page with lines so you can decorate your leaves in the next step. When you're coloring edges, it can be helpful to put a piece of scrap paper underneath so you don't get color on the page down below. I'd love to know what you think about these 2 colors together, this bright coral and this light lavender. At first, I was a little unsure of my choice, but I think I really like it in the end. I have been a big fan of lavender lately. Let me know what colors you decide to use for this project in the comments down below. Next, we're decorating our leaves, and what you decorate them with is totally up to you. You could do dots, dashes, lines, shapes. Just go with your gut on this one. This exercise is so easy, you can do it so many times. And if you don't like how it turns out the first time, you can just do it again. Honestly, at first I was a little unsure with the decorations I chose, but like so many times before, it did come together in the end. A lot of times you need to step back and wait until the whole page is finished before you actually pass judgment on it. And really, sketchbooks aren't a place to be judgy. They're a place to experiment and have fun and try new ideas. By the time I got to this 3rd vine, I was having so much fun decorating all these leaves. These repetitive marks are just so soothing to me, and they really help me relax. And I almost forgot I did have one extra color on this page. I added some background elements. These are just tiny little light pink V's scattered all across the page. From far away, they almost look like hearts, and this felt very Valentine-y at the end. Here is the end result, these pretty vines, and of course I did the design again on this left side. You'll see some more complicated leaves in blues and hot pink. I love how they both turned out. I hope you like yours too, and more importantly, I hope you had a lot of fun creating them. For this next idea, I'm using water-based markers in lots of different colors with lots of greens. I'm also using some fine liner pens. I like microns, but anything that's waterproof will work. And we'll be making cactus pots. You can draw any houseplant you like. I love drawing cactuses or cacti because of their shapes, and they're really fun to decorate. I don't think you can see them very well here, but I have 3 guidelines down the page because I'm going to be drawing 3 rows of pots, and I have a tendency to draw diagonally across the page if I don't give myself a little help. I decided to make all of my pots the same shape this time and just vary the color. I wanted to spend more time decorating them, but I think maybe next time I'll do different kinds of pots and shapes and sizes and make them tall and short. So draw whatever feels good to you in the moment. On to the cactus. I went online for some reference images and tried to find a lot of different shapes to do in each pot because I wanted to make them all look just a bit different. I also have a lot of green colors, so I decided to use all my greens, but they definitely don't have to be green. That's totally up to you. If you're not used to water-based markers, know that they have a tendency to be streaky. It's not a flat color like most alcohol-based markers are. At first, I really didn't like that when I started using them, but now I embrace it. I think it's a really unique look and effect that these markers create, and they're really great for layering colors over one another. I'd love to know if you decide to do this exercise as well, and if you decide to use cactus. Let me know in the comments below. I love to hear what you guys create. This was definitely my favorite part of this page, the decorations. I would either layer colors or add fine liner pen or do both. I had a blast. If you have darker plants, you can also use a jelly roll pen over top. This is a white colored one. When it first goes on, it looks a little transparent. Just give it some time and the white sort of magically appears. good, we're done with our cactus pots, or plant pots if you have plants instead. I love decorating the cactus and the pots as well, and using all of my colors. This is another great practice page, a good warm-up, and you can be as loose or as tight as you want. Just have fun with it. I'm back in my tiny sketchbook now for an idea I call fallen leaves. I'm starting by sketching a leaf shape in the middle of my page. We'll be sticking with one leaf shape for the entire exercise. It's up to you what kind of leaf shape you want to make. I tried this once before with just a simple oval, pointed oval like I did in the very first idea. And I've done this page many times now with lots of different leaf shapes. I really enjoy it. So imagine you're looking at the ground and it is covered with fallen leaves. That's what this page will look like when it's finished. First, I'll be covering the page with sketches of the leaves in all different directions, layered on top of each other, and then we'll go in with ink, and then finally with color. You can see here I've also put little pieces of each leaf on the sides of the pages. It's time to ink, and you definitely need a waterproof fine liner for this part. And you need to figure out where the leaf is going to go before you start drawing. Is it going to go over all the other leaves or under one leaf and over the other leaf? I like to make that decision before I even put my pen to the paper. I'd recommend taking this part pretty slow because it can get really confusing with all the overlapping sketch lines. When you're done and sure the ink is dry, you can go in with a kneaded eraser and erase all the extra pencil lines. But we're not quite done with this part yet. I want this page to look like it's even more covered with leaves, so I'm going back in with my pencil and drawing another leaf underneath all the rest. I like doing this step after I've inked some leaves already because it's so confusing with all those pencil lines. I do this a few more times until it feels like my page is full enough with leaves. After all the pencil lines are gone and the ink is dry, it's time for color. For this idea, I'm going to use watercolor, and I've chosen a green by Daniel Smith. What I like about this green is that it has two pigments together, so it sort of leans either blue or green. It's a very cool color green. I'll link it down below if you're interested. And we're going to start with a really thin, light wash of paint across the page. I use lots of water here and just a little bit of pigment because this color is going to be the top leaf color. You'll see what I mean in a minute. You'll see here I add a little too much color, but I can go back in because my page is already really wet and just thin it out and make it as light as I need it to be. Once you're done with this layer, it's important to let it dry completely, and I clipped it down to make it lay flat. After it's dry, it's time to add more color. The idea here is that the lightest leaf is on top, and each layer below gets darker and darker, and the background is the darkest. It's up to you which layer you paint first, but I found it easiest to start with the background because I could layer and layer and layer on top of that to make it even darker. You can see here that I am painting the background and a bottom leaf together because I know I'm going to go back later and paint more layers of paint on the background later. If that's a little confusing, let me know, but hopefully you'll be able to see that as we continue. I really enjoyed the layering process of this exercise, but if watercolor is not your thing, go ahead and use what materials you enjoy. I also did this with my water-based markers, and I used a lot of different colors, and I'll show you how that turned out at the end. Here I am adding another layer to the background as I mentioned before, and I did this quite a few times to make it really dark. And many layers later, we are finished. Here's how it turned out. I love how the lighter leaves just pop off the page. This is a great idea for those who like to do things slowly, take their time. I listened to a book while I did this exercise, and I even did it a few more times with different colors. Here I have one with a limier green. I think this was two greens, like a green gold and a little bit of a yellow. And the shape is much simpler. And here's my first try. I did this with my water-based markers with the darkest color at the bottom and the lightest on top. For our last exercise, I am pulling out my acrylic markers again, as well as some gouache colors for the background. And I am adding a scratch paper because I don't want the colors to bleed onto the pages below. And I will be creating a gradient of color that starts with the darkest at the bottom and moves up to the lightest at the top. And this is going to be very messy and raw, and you don't have to worry too much about how perfect the background is because it's going to be covered. This was definitely my favorite exercise of all, so we've saved the best for last. I'm calling it Field of Flowers, and it's very simple. It's a lot of circles and a lot of color and a lot of layers, and it's a lot of fun. If you don't feel like using paint, you can go ahead and just use your markers for the background. You don't even have to have a background if you don't want one. But if you do choose to use one, the color is totally up to you. I did this exercise in two very different colors. One is much cooler and pinky, and the other is really warm and vibrant and yellowy, and you'll see how they both look in the end. A good tip for the background is just to make sure the paint is fairly flat. You don't want a lot of texture on this one because when the markers go over it, it'll be a lot easier to draw your shapes on top. I'm starting with my darkest color first, And all we're doing is drawing circles, and they're definitely imperfect circles because these circles are flowers. I'm starting with the largest circles on the bottom of the page, and as we work our way up, they will get smaller and smaller. And of course, we'll be doing lots of layers on top of each other. Depending on what colors you use, the combinations can look a little ugly at first. I think mine did, but have faith. In the end, it looks way different. You'll want to make sure each layer is dry. Right here you can see it's not quite yet, before you layer the next round of flowers on top. If you choose to use acrylic markers for this exercise, some of the colors can be a bit transparent, so you might need to do 2 layers. I certainly did on some of my colors. I think this idea is fun to try with wacky color combinations, colors that you wouldn't necessarily use together. You never know what you're going to end up liking in the end. You can see once the layers start getting more dense, the page really does transform. Last but not least, time to add the centers of the flowers, which really helps transform them from circle blobs to flowers. Here is how it turned out. It's our field of flowers. This is another exercise I had fun doing while I was listening to a book or having a show on in the background, and I did it multiple times for sure. I decided to try some traditional green in my second try, and I used more yellows and reds, and it came out really warm and so different from the first. This might have to go on a canvas someday. Thanks so much for joining me. I had so much fun creating these pages with you. Let me know if you had a good time and what you'd like to see in the future down below, and I can't wait to see you soon. Take care.